In October 2024, a massive database allegedly containing close to 57 million Hot Topic customers' personal and payment data was discovered for sale on an illicit forum. Now, the breach potentially includes sensitive data from multiple retail companies. Now, how does this breach highlight the need for robust cybersecurity in the retail industry? Well, you're going to have to stay with us to uncover the details. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Season 3 of One Step Beyond Cyber. I'm Scott Kreisberg, CEO and founder of One Step Secure IT. Now, I'm thrilled to be back, sharing more insights on business, technology, and cybersecurity. Today, I'm joined by Tim Derrickson, a certified cybersecurity expert, to dive deep into why cybersecurity isn't just for techies or big companies. It's something we all need to take notice. All right, so Tim, let's get into it. This breach by Hot Topic.
Hot Topic.
Tell me, what do we know? This one's been a little bit trickier, right? Because there's not been a bunch of transparency on it. But what do you know?
So what we know is that it was three companies: Hot Topic, Torrid, and Lunchbox.
All three
For a total of 350 million records, is what they're saying and what the threat actors said.
Wow.
I don't know that that's actually been validated. We do know that Hot Topic had 57 million records stolen.
Okay. All right.
So what was exposed? So phone numbers, loyalty points, end of last four of credit card numbers, addresses, usernames. So they're still saying right now that it's one of the largest breaches, if not the largest breach for retail in history.
Dang. Not that we're going to get into it today, but I heard about AT&T today.
Yes.
But we'll save that one for another one.
So they say what caused the breach, right? They said that it was a threat actor called Satanic, and that they got in through an info stealer.
What is that?
So an info stealer is usually malware that someone downloads onto their computer, and it could be spyware, could be a keyboard logger, but it actually will go in, once it's in your system and you start typing, it starts logging what you have. So they stole a developer's credentials. And what's even more interesting is the fact that it went to Snowflake, and that's where the original breach happened, was in Snowflake. But it wasn't Snowflake's fault.
Okay. Now, I know we tend to harp on this a bit, but can you tell me, was a company of this size using multi-factor authentication?
According to them, no. So they actually got by. One of the reasons that they put in the credentials, and there was no multi-factor authentication.
Right.
So once they got in, they had, right, so it was basically, there's still, once again, radio silence from them, so we're not 100% sure exactly what happened.
Okay.
We can kind of infer from the type of attack what happened.
Right.
But we really don't know exactly what happens until we get more details from
And
Hot
so-
Topics or whoever's doing the forensics.
So we're back to the basics.
Back to the
and,
basics.
We talk about, good length, complex passwords, right? Unique passwords for each and every site that you work with.
Yes.
And we always talk about making sure you have 2FA activated. And a lot of times when I talk to clients, I tell them, make sure when you're using 2FA, if you're offered the ability to deactivate it for 30 days or to remember you for 30 days, always say no. Never, ever lower the value of that multi-factor authentication. So, little pro tip there for you. So, Satanic, huh? That sounds like a fun group.
Sounds like a nice little threat group to get involved with. Sure, they demanded $20,000 at first.
From
and they
Hot Topic?
And they reduced it to 10. And then after that was for the ransomware. And then after that, they hit them for $100,000 to say, you need to pay us so we don't release your stolen data.
Okay, we're going to talk about that in a minute.
Yeah.
But so let's back it up a little bit. So if the bad actors, get information like you talked about, so credit card information, last four digits of Social Security, loyalty points information, what kind of trouble can that cause?
Well, okay, so you have the retail side of the house and you have the user side of the house, right? So on the retail side of the house, you have reputational damage, you have legal and financial responsibilities. You'll probably end up getting sued, some type of class action suit. You're going to have your business disruption because you did get ransomware. So you're not doing anything for a couple of days unless you're in IT or security. And then, of course,
And since this is retail, sorry to cut you off, since this is retail, there's these 3 letters that seem to come to my mind.
PCI.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you said fines. If there was 300 million records of credit cards out there, isn't it like some number of dollars per?
Yeah, it's
Do you know?
now I know what you're saying, and I forgot
Yeah.
what it was. So basically, it'll probably be upwards of 50,000, I would think, from PCI. And what they'll do is they can do this monthly, they can do it weekly, depending on how the remediation goes.
Yeah,
But-
it can be pretty painful.
Yeah.
It can be pretty.
PCI is since it's a private corporation, they basically fine in their own way. It's not government run.
Right. Yep. It's still a compliancy though.
Yep.
Right. There's industry compliance and there's regulatory. They both can be painful.
Both can be
Yeah.
painful, and this is probably going to be very painful for them.
So we're talking Hot Topic.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking Torrid, and we're talking about box lunch, right?
Lunchbox, yes.
All right. Thank you.
No problem.
Lunchbox. So now, if these are larger businesses, and we tend to work with small to medium-sized businesses, and when we're dealing with them, is talking about something like this still relevant?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, think about it. If they're a larger corporation, most likely they have more people looking at their cybersecurity. They have more people. If they are PCI compliant, they're doing their security training. They're doing all these different things that they're supposed to do to stay safe.
Right.
And something fell through the cracks. Something wasn't done, and they find it. The threat actor finds it if they're not doing their scans properly. They should have found that, and they didn't. And here we are.
And here we are. So it seems like some of our clients, or all of our clients, to be honest, tend to be more prepared, tend to be better protected. Like these bigger companies sometimes are just too big, and they might not know what the left hand and the right hand are doing.
I think
not every big
yeah.
company. Obviously, you've got very well run large companies, but when you hear about, like, again,
What's interesting,
AT&T today, I mean, it's
yeah,
like,
but what we're seeing too is there's a certain threshold where you sit there and you have a company, especially when you talk small to medium-sized businesses, as they grow to become that large business type
Right.
model, they're still kind of morphing into and putting all those policies and boards and different things into place so that they can follow their compliance GRC. So a lot of the smaller businesses can't have a compliance officer, a security analyst, somebody who's going to actually go in and do the pin testing, the red team, the blue team. So it's usually one person. And as they grow, they have to build it out
Right.
and make sure that they're putting in solid practices for cybersecurity, and especially when it comes to GRC, governance, risk, and compliance, so that they have policies in place. The policies are mapped to the controls. The controls are all being tested, and every time you bring something new in, you start all over again. So I think that there's that piece, and they get to that growth point, and there's between these large to the ultra large, something drops off, like you said. They're too clunky, maybe. I don't know. But they start dropping out because they start missing pieces until they become cohesive.
yeah, and I think my point isn't that large companies are run worse than smaller companies. I think where I was heading with that was in today's very digital world and how interconnected it is, I think that you've got risk, you've got the impact, and then you've got reputational damage. Those are a trifecta, right?
Absolutely.
And so I was bringing it up so that our audience could get the most from this, just because of, you use the mistakes made or the errors made by these behemoths that can probably afford such an issue, and let's help our small and medium-sized businesses really reduce this risk down to as much. So let's talk about let's just rip. So it's minimize risk, it's impact, it's reputational damage. Let's talk about risk. So how can we minimize risk here?
Well, minimize risk goes back to making sure that you have your policies in place. You have an incident response plan, and you know it. It's not something that you just create once and you put off on the side for insurance. so that
Oh,
they
it's
can
like
check off that box
Yeah.
and say that I understand what's going to happen when someone breaks into my environment and I can stop them. Most of the time, if you don't know your incident response plan, you're probably not going to stop them too quickly, and it's going to exacerbate the issue.
Right.
So,
So what about like, compliances? That could help to minimize risk, right? You've got, like we just said, industry, you've got regulatory, but what happens if is there any industry that has neither? I don't know, maybe.
well, actually, yeah, we had talked about that earlier. Our judicial system,
Right.
courts and lawyers do not have a regulatory body.
Okay.
Now, they of course still have due diligence. They have their law degrees, which can be taken away from them. They have to be ethical in everything that they do. I mean, there's safeguards kind of in place, but not when it comes to data security. They
Right.
have to go by everything. If they're taking credit cards, they have to go by PCI. But I think that's about it. There's nothing specifically for the federal court system or the court system itself.
Right. So let's say you're a small to medium-sized business and you've got, let's say, no regulatory compliance that you need to meet. Maybe you have PCI, which isn't the hardest thing in the world to do, but it still takes some work. But is there anything they should do, like maybe the Swiss Army knife of compliance, even if they're not bound by like a NIST CSF? Wouldn't that be a good
That would actually
framework?
be an excellent framework.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. And this CSF 2.
Oh, okay. There you go.
So
it's
they
been
just updated it, and they're probably going to update it again. President Biden, before he left office, actually signed on, I don't know if it was an executive order, it might have been, but another heightened cybersecurity policy that is going to go out.
Okay.
So they're definitely staying on top of it, or trying to.
All right. Well, cool. Now, sticking on this risk thing, sometimes people that we speak to before they start working with us, they'll say, "Oh, I've got antivirus. I'm good, right? I've got antivirus. I'm very cautious about what sites I go to. Is that good enough, or do we need to talk about maybe a layered approach, not relying on any one thing?"
Well, yeah, it's actually really interesting too, because a lot of people are now looking at where we're going, because the defense in depth works when you match it with something else. So what it does though is it looks at everything. So it's it's making everything collaborate together. So whether it's in the cloud, or it's on-prem, or it's an application or a database somewhere else, it's bringing everything together so that it collaborates. Kind of like a SIM, or like your XDR would be considered part of the CSMA. And what it's doing is it's bringing everything and making it work together. So when you bring these two together, and I think it's going to be the two processes, or one's a framework and one's more of a principle that we're going to put together that'll make everybody more secure.
Excellent. Let's talk about reputational damage. And so we're talking about minimizing risk, minimizing reputational damage because you do these things, right? So there's, doing a NIST CSF, even if you're not bound to a NIST CSF, right? There's, definitely complying with PCI if you're in the retail market, which a lot of our clients are. And so if you are then breached, because even if you do everything right, there's still a chance that you could suffer an event. And, so how does this help minimize that risk?
Well, definitely, if you have a plan in place, it's going to minimize risk, right? Because you know what you're going to do. So if it comes through your firewall, you know that there's that next layer, whether we can say zero trust or that antivirus, which I don't think anybody really depends on anymore. It's more of a endpoint detection and response, or
Right.
managed detection and response. But each layer stops something very specific.
Right.
And if you're using something like zero trust, now you don't trust anything. When someone clicks on something, if I go out to the internet and I download something that's malware, it has my rights on the computer. If I can install something on my computer, it's going to install and it's going to run it as it's me. So now I'm hoping that I have something else on my computer that's going to stop me from doing the installation, like an application whitelisting, or something that's not going to let me do the installation, or something that's going to look at it and say, hey, this doesn't look right. So That's why you want that defense in depth.
Right. So you've got this layered approach. You've got compliance that you can help reduce the risk. You've got reducing your reputational damage because you've done these right things, right? Now, the odds are high. Businesses are going to have an event. They're just
Odds are
high.
very high. 43% worldwide got hit last year.
Right. So with those kinds of odds, it would probably be smart to have reduce that impact, right? So you're only down for a few days. Talk about that a little bit.
Reducing impact. So we want to be able to detect it right away, right? We want to have those things in place that's going to detect what's going on. And then once that happens, we have an incident response plan that tells us what to do. If it's ransomware, it tells us exactly how to walk through the steps to make sure that we contain what's happening. And if we can contain it, then it's not going to come out, which means less damage.
Okay.
Also less impact on your business. You might not have to shut your business down. And there are lots of tools now too that actually work with you, whether doing backups to the cloud, that actually also looks for ransomware. Because what they'll try to do is if they can get in your environment, in ransomware your environment, you back up the ransomware. Well, a lot of these products now will actually look for that, look for those encrypted files and look at it and decide if it's ransomware, it'll tell you.
Excellent. It's good.
So there's we're
it's
getting better.
Yeah, so it's this trifecta. So, that's why I like modern day medicine, early detection. You can solve a lot of problems with early detection. All right, well, look, let's talk about the fact that they were ransomed and, they were asked to pay a certain amount of money. Whether they did or didn't is maybe unknown right now. But they were also, I think there's a discussion about the fact that they were also asked to pay money to take the data off the internet. And I think that is called double extortion.
Double extortion.
So what can you tell, what do we know
So,
about that? Yeah,
whether you
explain
pay,
that whole concept.
Whether you pay your ransom or not, you have a 5 to 15% chance of being double extorted. And that's what they're saying industry-wide. So basically what happens is you go out, you decide that you're going to pay the ransom. You go in, they send you your keys, so you actually are able to unencrypt your data, and you think you're moving forward, and then they turn around and they say, guess what? We still have all your data. We know all your dirty business. We stole all your HR files. We stole all of your financial files. We have all your client listings. If you don't give us X amount of dollars, then we're gonna send it to your clients. We're gonna put it out and post it to the dark web so that someone buys it, and then they can contact your clients. And then of course it goes out from there.
And that's done by the original bad actors?
It can be.
But what happens if the original bad actors, they get their ransom paid and somebody's already downloaded the information, right? And so it's already kind of too late, and now could they get double ransomed?
Oh, absolutely. There's actually been cases where when rebuilding environments, so you get ransomware, you rebuild your environment exactly the same way that you had it. Before you can really harden your environment, they hit you again. So that has happened.
Okay.
Doesn't happen very often. Bad actors have found out that if you do something like that, it makes it harder for people to pay.
Yeah, it's bad
why
business.
would you
It's
pay?
bad for business.
Bad for business,
Yeah.
and they are a business.
Yeah. So I think this has been great. I think wrapping this up a bit, let's talk about PCI. When I speak to business owners in the retail market, I regularly hear that, I outsource PCI compliance. My software handles it for me, or the credit card company is independent of my POS system, my point of sale system. So I don't need to worry about it's outsourced, so to speak, right? So is this still something that we need to?
The only time that it is really outsourced, if PCI is outsourced, is if all of the financial transactions are happening on someone else's website or outside of your website. would be the way to put it. So if I have a Shopify
I was
site.
gonna say, it's like Shopify,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
you're
yeah.
over there now?
Yeah.
So they're actually taking that?
Correct.
Okay.
So it would be the plugin that would be used that would actually be Shopify or somebody else. Some of the Zebra devices and all these different devices, they are actually PCI compliant. Everything that goes on within them are encrypted. But if
Right.
it's crossing your network, you're responsible for that communication.
Okay, so let's say you do. Let's say you outsource this to Shopify, right? It's great. Does that mean a retailer just doesn't have to worry about cybersecurity?
No, because it's not just financial information they're looking for.
Right.
Look, it doesn't matter really anymore. Data has become the currency. It's the emails, it's the loyalty points, it's the usernames, it's the passwords. You can do, if I go in and I don't get any credit card numbers, I get passwords. So I can now do credential stuffings anywhere on any site. So if you bank at Wells Fargo, I can hit other banks and see if you bank there with the same email address and same password, credential stuffing. It might come back and tell me that you actually have an account there, and so I now have something to work on. It could be loyalty points. Now I can go spend it on someone else at a different date.
Okay.
So I mean, there's all kinds of. It's data that is the currency. It's not just your credit card numbers. Credit card numbers help.
Yeah, that's true. That's a different kind of currency. Well, this has been great. I learned a lot about like how it's not just the compliancy. It's also what you do internally to protect your data, right? And that it's not just for the big guys to worry about. The little guys definitely have a say in the matter, right? They actually can reduce their risks and reduce their exposure.
Absolutely.
And so it's been great. So Tim, thank you so much for spending the afternoon with us here.
Hey, thanks for inviting me.
All right. All right, I get it. Cybersecurity can sometimes feel like one of those topics you just can't escape from. It's everywhere. And honestly, it's easy to get fatigued with all the information out there. But here's the thing. The takeaway from today's conversation is simple. Every business, no matter the size, is in control of how they operate and what risks they're willing to take. Yes, the threats are real, but the choices you make now can help you avoid the worst. So whether you're a small business or a major player, it's up to you to decide how much risk you're willing to live with and how much you're ready to protect. Thanks for sticking with us today through this important topic, and a huge thanks to Tim Derrickson for sharing his insights. If nothing else, remember this: you have more control than you might think when it comes to cybersecurity. Thanks for listening to One Step Beyond Cyber. Take care, stay safe, and keep your business protected. We'll see you next time.